Welcome to a Dash of Life podcast, where every episode brings you a touch of spirit, a pinch of passion, and a zest for life.
All right, thank you for coming back. I hope you enjoyed part one of episode 6. In this episode, we're going to talk about the big C word, communication. And I know I focused a lot of the discussion on women. However, men, you are up next, so don't worry. I have a little bit of a segment for you as well. Embracing the power of a woman. I feel like there are men who are intimidated by a woman who stands in her own right. A woman who is independent can be submissive. And she can be led. She has to be led by the right person. Someone who is very much in tuned to who they are as a person, not insecure. But I'll get into that. So we're going to talk about embracing the power of a woman and how men can do that in their partnership with them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic relationship. It could be a work relationship or within society, a community relationship. And I think that we as society just completely need to be open that and understand that women are not here just to have babies and take care of the home. I don't believe that. I don't submit to that. And from my understanding and my perspective, women are here with a purpose too. It's not just men. And we need to empower women to do that. Look, we can't have, and you all can probably attest to this, we need a women's perspective on a lot of things. And if we don't empower women to do that and be comfortable doing that, then we are doing a disservice not only to ourselves, but also to the women we are trying to control, and then to society as well. Women. All right, I said too much, so it was supposed to be an introduction, but as you can see, I'm very passionate about this. So stay tuned for that. But also, we're going to talk about women and how we can respect men. And also, we'll delve into, I don't know how much we're going to get into it. We'll see how it goes. But also talking about self-control. We know that the majority of crimes committed against women are inflicted by men, and women have the majority of violent crimes committed to them. Men are also victims of violent crimes as well. However, women take the majority of that. I think it's about 86%. I'll look at that, make sure. But yeah, so all right, let's get into this. Let's talk about the big C word, communication. Sounds fun, right? All right, so we know that men and women communicate completely different, right? Right. Men and women have different communication styles, different thought processes, etc. And in a traditional sense, if you will, men are problem solvers. So you come to a man, you say, I need this, and he does it, takes care of it, hopefully, right? And problem solved, he moves on. Women have more of a communication style where we are seeking like understanding. We are definitely more emotionally attuned to whatever is going around us. And with that, we seek a connection. Like there's got to be like some kind of connection to help us understand that. So is it a little bit more in depth? Probably so. And I get this all the time when I talk to my son. He's very literal about stuff, and it's like this and that. Whereas women, you may have seen some of those little funny diagrams about the way that we process information and things go. Like men's just a straight line. This is it. That's it. Got it. Women, we're thinking about multiple things when we bring up something. So it could be impact. It could be, what way are we going to get this done? How can we make sure that it's done correctly? Things like that. So it's definitely more in depth, I will say. And again, these are generalizations for the context of conversation. Not everybody operates the same, right? We know this. Although both methods are very valuable, it is definitely important to understand your partner's or your husband, your wife's method of communication, right? You have to understand what they're bringing to the table, how they communicate. You have to understand there might be some nuances behind that communication. You just have to know your partner. Many women have this notion, or should I say assumption, that men see things the way that we do. And it's just not the case. There might be some very in tune men who understand that. But in general, the way we view the world is completely different. The way we view situations is completely different. And I think this is the cause of many conflicts within the marriage itself. It can cause a lot of tension because there's a miscommunication of truly what the need is, or, what the problem is. And you cannot go into a marriage not understanding how your partner communicates. Or if your partner doesn't communicate at all, then that's a whole nother issue. You should be entering a relationship with some sort of method and understanding of how you are going to communicate. I will say, God help my ex-husband. My method of communication was not communicating. It wasn't asking. It wasn't, I wouldn't say I had no method of communication, but it was very much to be desired for improvements. And I thought many times that because I saw something that needed to be attended to, that he saw it as well. And so as opposed to me saying like, hey, can you do this, or this needs to happen, I would just let it sit and be like, well, why didn't you think of it? But we all think differently. So anyway, that's enough about that. It wasn't always the case. And it wasn't always the case. And men that understand their woman's method of communication, you got it. You have it. It can be a bridge to allowing her to express herself more if she's allowed to express her feelings and communicate in a way that is non-judgmental and safe for her. Like, she can't be expressing her feelings and then you bite her head off. She's not going to communicate anymore. Or she's going to be less apt to being open, completely open with her communication. So I think all of that needs to be considered when we're talking about relationships and man versus woman in our communication styles. They're not going to be the same. I think I will always advocate for marriage counseling. I don't think anyone should get into a relationship without that. And there's so many unknowns when you're going into a marriage that if you don't do that preparation work up front, then you run the risk of the marriage failing, one, but also creating an atmosphere or environment of resentment because certain things didn't get communicated or they didn't happen the way that we expected. And in order for a relationship to be completely operating within its fullness of its power, then that preparation work is so critical, I think, to successes in marriage. Not to say that if you do all of this up front that you still won't end in divorce. You might be more committed to navigating the changes that you experience in the relationship. Again, I am not the all end be all of anything, just providing perspective so that we can truly show up completely in our dash of life and optimize our time that we have on this earth. So on the same vein of communication and prep work for the marriage, when you're going into a marriage, when you're going into a partnership, that has to be established up front. Like, you know, this is how I communicate, you know. There are times where I shut down, you know, and I need you to pull me out of that, you know, that kind of thing. I'm not saying that me personally, but like those kinds of scenarios where your husband or your wife understand that like you internalize things, so you're not going to be outwardly communicative. So understanding that and that perspective from the differences of how men communicate and how women communicate will certainly set you up for success. And establishing that piece before you go into a relationship definitely will set you up for success. All right, so I'm gonna pivot a little bit. We're about halfway through, and I think we might do 2.5 episodes of this. Or 2.5 segments of this episode, if you will. When we're talking about embracing the power of a woman, this is not necessarily from a romantic perspective. As I mentioned in the previous episode, there are so many amazing women out here that are leading Fortune 500 companies, that are leading our communities, that are leading our churches. And can you imagine if they weren't allowed or encouraged to show up with that power that they have? Man, our world would be dull. I'm just going to say, no, I'm kidding. But just keep that in perspective. Bringing in a woman's perspective on emotional intelligence, nurturing leadership and her possession of that, and her ability to multitask. Even though there are some people that say that you can't truly multitask, but you can multitask. Now, from a general perspective, right? Yes. Can you focus on 2 things at once? Probably not, but you can multitask when it comes to initiatives and things like that, and work on different projects and things. So embracing a woman's perspective on that changes the dynamics of our relationship. So having that perspective cultivates an environment where the woman's contribution sets the organization up, the community up for success. And that is why we should embrace a woman's power and full potential. I alluded to it earlier, but supporting a woman in her ambition and allowing her autonomy to pursue her dreams, her goals, her purpose, allows her to completely show up and tap into her full potential. And that further empowers her and allows her to be an instrument to society. The success of a woman completely benefits a man. You know, like if we think about it, successful women and the empowering nature and nurturing that they have, the understanding that they come with, the grace that they come with, further empowers others. It further empowers men to reach their full potential. And having that certainly brings a different perspective to community, period. Now, there's a lot of men who stand behind their egos and try to control how, when a woman presents herself as she is in her potential, and they try to cap it. And if you don't think that's true, tap into corporate America, where women continually have to break barriers to be this, to be that, to be CEOs, to be thought leaders, right? They have to consistently, even to get paid the same amount as a man. We are not. If a woman is doing the same job as a man, why can't she get paid the same amount? It's the same amount of work, the same job. And she might do it more effectively. And I'm not hating on men. I'm just saying, if we empower women, men, your jobs would be so much easier because you have that helpmate right there with you. And again, it's not just based on personal relationships. It could be jobs, you know. It could be in the community. So recognizing and empowering the perspective that a woman brings further empowers you. And those that recognize it are way ahead of the game, because we still, in this day and age, have men out here who say they are Christians, but try to control everything a woman does, tries to control her body. And don't tell me, I know it says in the Bible that the man is the head of the woman's body, but if you keep reading, it also says the flip side of that too, where women also are the head of the man's body. So, but anyway, we have men out here in this society today that still feel like the woman's place is in the home. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? If you think about some of the women that have been in music and decided to pursue their dream in music, just for instance, in newscasting, in, Mary Barra, if she was not encouraged, to work on cars and work her way up in GM, come on now. If she was encouraged to just to stay home and be a mom and, take care of the family at home. What? No. I don't believe that's God's design. Anyway, so I need to move on. And I may have just enough to finish this segment, and then I'll do part 3. So on the flip side, so now we need to flip it to men. Women should respect men in their natural instincts. What are their natural instincts? Well, I mean, there's 2: to provide and protect. Men have a natural instinct, and men, correct me if I'm not right, but men have a natural instinct to provide and protect his family. And in order to maintain a balanced dynamic in the relationship, women, you have to understand this aspect of the man or of your husband. So, what am I saying? Naturally, a man is going to want to lead. A man is going to want to lead in order to be able and have control over that protection and provision. And he will naturally want to give instruction on how to do it and what to do in the relationship and what he wants you to do in the relationship. And so by actively acknowledging his contributions and his efforts, that is fostering a sense of partnership. It doesn't take much. I'm just going to say, it doesn't take much acknowledgement. Like, if a man, and this is just people in general, like, people like to be acknowledged for their efforts, but if you are acknowledging your husband's efforts and everything that he is doing to help provide for the family, that goes a long way, and it doesn't take much. It may not be like an outwardly aggressive, like, you need to acknowledge me, or, something like that, but behind the scenes and subtly, they like that acknowledgement, I think. Women appreciate a man's natural approach to problem solving. And I mentioned it before. You tell a man something and they like have this one-track mind and they're just gonna go do it, right? Go do it, go provide the answer, the solution, etc., right? So unless you're really clear, like, okay, honey, don't do this, but try to avoid such and such, he's going to do it the best way that he knows how. And so if it's not the way that you envisioned him to do it, depending on whatever it is, but if it's not the way you envisioned him to do it, then acknowledge that. That's okay. What do they say? There are many ways to skin a cat. If it gets done appropriately and finally with a finality of we don't have to address it again, then it's taken care of in his mind. So acknowledge that, because a lot of conflict comes from, well, he didn't do it the way that I wanted him to do it. Okay, well, were you specific on what your instructions were and what you needed? The other aspect of that is many men look to solve the problem, but they don't necessarily get involved into the emotional aspect of whatever is going on. So, and I think that's where we, as man versus woman, vary in our responses to things. Like, women, we definitely are more attached to the emotional understanding of the situation, right? And so a man is just very matter of fact gonna say, well, do this, take care of it. And we're like, but, So just keep that in mind too. Like, his answering the question or his providing that input is him solving it in a way that he best knows how, I think. So keep that in mind too. And I'll just reiterate and go back to, again, this is why it's so critical and so important for you to understand how your partner communicates up front, before we get married, before, before we get deep into this relationship. We have to understand how our partner communicates. Because then, once we understand that and we're looking at that from that lens, or through that lens, I should say, then there is less opportunity to have resentments and misunderstandings and conflicts, because we do understand that and have taken that into consideration when he's completing a task or addressing a concern. Also, in terms of respect, is women having a respect for a man and the decision-making process of the relationship, and getting and gaining his input. Yes, we can be independent all day, but if we're a part of a partnership, then we need to be involving our partner in the discussion so that we can gain their perspective. So women, you have to, unless you've got it set up to where he's just like, do whatever, and he trusts you with making those decisions, that's different. But in terms of the basis of a partnership, women having the man's perspective and his input is very critical to the success of a relationship. Because honestly, I feel like everybody wants to be heard. They want their perspective to be understood, or at least inputted, right? And so if I am consistently saying like, I want to be involved and I'm not, then that's going to cause conflict. And I'm going to feel like, in turn, then I'm going to feel like that my opinion doesn't count. Oh Lord, the science of relationships is so crazy. And that is without saying like the outcome, regardless of the outcome, regardless of whatever you land on, you at least give him the opportunity to provide input. If there's a certain area that he excels in, allow him to lead that. And I shouldn't say allow, encourage him to lead that. If you know he excels in a particular area, encourage him to lead the discussion. I think we get so caught up in societal noise, especially when it comes to relationships. Oh, we should be this and this and this and this and this and this, and he should this and this and this, and he should and they should, that kind of thing, I think. And so I think that we get caught up in such societal noise within our relationships that we forget, and we ultimately miss the mark on this, that yes, you can be an independent, strong woman, but you've also agreed to enter a partnership with your spouse. And so let it be that, a partnership. There is give and take. There's back and forward. There is up and down. And ultimately, there should be balance, right? Both parties can come as strong and independent as they want to, but when they enter into a partnership, a marriage, then you have to give and take. You have to allow your partner to operate in their full potential. And it's not easy. I'm not saying any of this is easy at all, but what I am saying is that there needs to be an acknowledgement and an adherence to that if the relationship is going to survive long term. All right, so thank you for part 2 of episode 6, Man versus Woman. And next, we'll get into self-control, sexual relationships, and how that intertwines or doesn't. And we'll see how it goes. But thank you for joining me for part 2, and I look forward to getting you all back for part 3 of episode 6. All right, thank you all. Please like, subscribe, and share if you feel like this message will help someone else.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of A Dash of Life podcast. I hope today's conversation added a touch of spirit, a pinch of passion, and a zest for life to your day.